Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is the highest grossing, I guess you could say, video game Kickstarter that isn't a failed console or long-awaited sequel. I say that, but what is Bloodstained if not the long-awaited true sequel to Castlevania Symphony of the Night? Developed by Koji Igarashi, architect of the Castlevania series, Bloodstained seeks to follow the footsteps of the now all-but-dead Konami franchise. And before we get any further, I want to disclose that I actually backed this one, only for $5, so my investment isn't that high, and honestly that was mostly because of David Hayter. Everyone heard about Bloodstained right away. It's the perfect storm of PR, a high-profile developer, and a good-looking game. Or at least a good-looking idea that's well pitched. I want to keep the focus of this video on Bloodstained, but the backstory should be pointed out here. Koji Igarashi worked at Konami and, among other games, worked heavily on the Castlevania series, although contrary to semi-popular belief, he didn't actually create the series like Keiji Inafune did with Mega Man. He only came in on Symphony of the Night, which is still considered one of the best, if not the best, games in the series. Most people kinda don't want to peak that early, but Koji seems to have escaped well enough, if only because everyone hates Konami so much. Everyone knows what happened with Konami by now, and if not, well, this isn't the video channel for you, I'm sorry. The effects of that terrible company were felt for a long time within the Castlevania series, as it was relegated mostly to small handheld games that weren't well promoted, and most of the games were mediocre at best anyway. The handful of big-budget console games, such as Lord of Shadows, were, well, again, mediocre at best, had nothing to do with Castlevania, and didn't have Igarashi involved. Although Hideo Kojima did produce Lords of Shadows, but now I am getting off topic. Igarashi, for whatever reason, was banished to such classics as Atomodius Excellent and Leadme's for the Kinect. He eventually got tired of his new diminished role in the studio and left Konami for good in 2014, taking his love of Castlevania with him. In 2015, he partnered up with Japanese developers NT Creates, responsible for games like Mega Man 9 and 10, and co-developers of Mighty No. 9, another Keiji Inafune reference. Later that year in June, Igarashi and NT Creates, as well as Deep Silver behind the scenes, but more on that later, launched a Kickstarter campaign for Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, and 2-Player Productions was there to document it. The game was pitched as a spiritual successor to not only Castlevania, but Castlevania Symphony of the Night specifically. It's not hard to see the influence either, and not just because it's a 2D action platformer. It's got the same aesthetic, the same feel, the same gothic artwork, similar music, and animation type. This really is Symphony of the Night with a new coat of paint, not that that's a bad thing. Let's see what the Kickstarter page has to say for itself. Explore, grow, craft. Exploration. Bloodstained story unfolds as you explore Gebel's hellish castle, a sprawling structure that features a variety of locations. As you explore the massive castle, you'll find warp gates that allow you to travel quickly without having to backtrack too much. As you would expect, Bloodstained is a Metroidvania, meaning there's going to be a lot of backtracking as you unlock new powers and abilities that allow you to access new areas, fight bigger, tougher enemies. Actually, they call it Igavania here, either because of copyright worries or just wanting to come up with a new term for it, I don't know. RPG elements. It's not an Igavania without leveling, and Bloodstained will be no exception. In addition to the classic elements everyone's come to expect, enemies in Bloodstained will drop a wide variety of items, materials, and magic crystals, necessary to create the items that will get you safely through Gebel's castle. Hey, I just said that. Although I don't really see what enemies dropping stuff has to do with leveling up and RPG elements, but whatever. There's going to be crafting in the game too, although the blurb for this one is kind of the same as the RPG elements one. Crafting! As you explore, fight enemies, and complete quests, you will gain experience and become more powerful, acquiring a variety of weapons along the way. Enemies will also drop materials that you can use to craft new weapons and abilities using Miriam's training in alchemy. You are Miriam, an orphan scarred by an alchemist's curse which slowly crystallizes your skin. You must battle your way through a demon-filled castle summoned by Gebel, your old friend whose body has become more crystal than flesh. So as you can see, the biggest difference is the main character and the story. Castlevania was never really known for its story, and it still remains a mystery how big a role it'll play in Bloodstained. But what we have so far sounds deliciously interesting. From what I understand, there was some kind of order of alchemists that had some kind of thing going on that backfired and cursed everyone with crystal skin. Our main character, Miriam, was cursed, and now demons are out and about, presumably causing havoc. Picked up as an orphan by an alchemist at a young age, Miriam became a host of the Dark Alchemist's curse. Although the magic crystals were fused with her body at a young age, for 10 years she lay sleeping, while the curse matured to its full form. It was during this period that the demons arrived, meaning she missed their appearance and awoke with a mild form of amnesia, not quite fully understanding what happened to her. Then there's Gebel himself, the antagonist of the series, and apparently it's pronounced Gebel. Gebel, that's an interesting name, I guess you could say. Original host for the magic crystal curse that summons demons to the planet. Gebel was the only one to survive its effects at such a high level. He destroyed the guild that created him, but in doing so realized he was no longer human and had no place on Earth. This, in turn, led him to summon the demon castle from hell to appear on the planet. It is said that his real purpose in summoning the castle was to give Miriam a place of her own, but as his magic crystal disease progressed, he soon forgot his own reasoning. The more he surrounded himself with the Hellspawn, the quicker the magic crystals engulfed his body. He continues to plot the downfall of man, and how best to convince, or use, Miriam to achieve his dark ambition. That's David Hayter, everyone, or as you probably better know him as, Guyver, Bernie, and Old Rufus. Getting him in the game was actually a stretch goal at $850,000, which was unlocked pretty quickly. There's no word on who the rest of the cast will be yet, but who cares when you have David Hayter? And you can bet this means no more of this either.
What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets!
Having David Hayter on board also kind of seals the whole abandoned, screwed over by Konami narrative, doesn't it? Anyway, the rest of the page goes into great detail about everyone working on the game and the crowdfunding campaign. NT Creates is handling development while Igarashi leads, Fangamer's handling most of the rewards, and some other companies are doing some other stuff. Quite a lot of hands are in this pie, although there's no mention anyway of Deep Silver's involvement. For that, you'll have to look elsewhere when it was discovered that Deep Silver filed a trademark for the name Bloodstained, and were also apparently some mysterious donor to the campaign. It would be nice to know whether or not Deep Silver really were officially publishing the game or not. Personally, I'm not a fan of backing games or any other crowdfunding project that already has a publisher. That kind of goes against the whole point of crowdfunding. So far, Igarashi and NT Creates have been mum on the subject, possibly not wanting to create another Mighty No. 9 fiasco. It's a shame they're being so weird about this partnership, given how great the team has been at providing updates. They've consistently done one a month since the end of the campaign, sometimes more, and they've been open to backer feedback, and not just in the small details. In December 2015, the team showed off the first set of shaders for the game, which basically about how the lighting works. They showed 2 different versions the team were thinking about and asked for feedback from the backers. The backers actually didn't really like either of them, surprising NT Creates and Igarashi, and they were back to the drawing board. Over the next few months, there were several back and forths between backers and the developers, trying to get the right look. Eventually, everyone settled on something Igarashi hadn't even initially considered, a more cartoony, stylized look. Recently, they've shown their in-game testing area, I guess you could call it, a flat, empty area that they use to test animations for character models, something we don't normally see. It all comes together to show how a Kickstarter should be run. A lot of info provided about the game, plenty of updates, and of course the game itself looks good and fills a hole left in the market by a terrible company. It doesn't hurt the people in charge have proven experience in game development and are willing to share at least some of the behind-the-scenes stuff and let backers get some degree of input. There's something to be said about this being the best of the big 3 Japanese developers coming to Kickstarter, but that's perhaps for another show. Bloodstained raised over $5.5 million, and it looks to ship in March 2017, though I think we can all assume it's probably going to be later than that. Development is early going so far, but we'll see how the game shapes up in the coming months. I look forward to it, and to hearing David Hayter play an evil alchemist.
Colonel, what is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets. But enough talk. Have at you.
Whew, wow, Batman v Superman really sucks, doesn't it? Like, it's really bad. I knew it would be bad, not to toot my own horn, but I think that was worse than anyone anticipated. We could probably do better than WB. In fact, I'm pretty sure we can if you donated to our Patreon page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and I bet you we could do it better. Well, we'll talk about maybe doing it. I call dibs on the Joker.
I've got you now, Batman!